Okay. Well, yeah, no, thanks, Zane. And first of all, massive congratulations on the European indoor gold. Um, it was amazing to watch. I watched the whole series, and yeah, I thought it was one of the most impressive series of indoor shot putting I've seen. Um, would you like to talk about that a little bit? Just to
Thank you. Yeah, sure. No, so it was everything kind of came together at the right time, I think, and with a good plan and yeah, I suppose a bit of big match temperament and rising to the occasion. Those types of competitions are the perfect ones to do. Yeah, it can feel a little bit disappointing. I think I definitely had more in me, but shot put with it being a technical sport, sometimes you can be in great physical shape, but the technique you have to respect the rhythm and timing of it. So I'm still learning. It's yeah, I've only kind of been doing it professionally for two years now, so I'm still learning a hell of a lot as I go along.
yeah,
But yeah, so far so good, and it's nice. I think success breeds success, and nice to know that you can compete up there with the best of them. So I think that competition kind of felt like yeah, a peg in the ground.
yeah. I mean, from what I saw, 22, 22:06 was it in the end?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah, and
exactly.
I think it was round 4 or 5. I can't remember. It was a foul, but that looked way over the 22. So there's definitely way more to come. It's really pleasing.
Thank you. Yeah, to be honest, I can't even remember much of that competition. A lot of it's a blur, which I think a lot of the best ones usually are. But I think yeah, just the nature of the competition, having to respond to the pressure of being pipped, by a few centimeters, and then having to respond to that. I think that's kind of what I'm most proud of. Not, of course, the distance, but having to respond because each competition is almost like a living organism in a sense. It takes on the circles are different. You can never really judge between competitions because it's all got a different energy, different circle, different atmosphere. So yeah, to respond when you need to, I think those are often the most pleasing times for me in the event.
Cool. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, just probably thinking, who the hell am I? So you've obviously met Brydon before.
yeah,
His circumstances are that he's going into essentially a year gap year before uni. He's going to have a lot of time on his hands. He's just looking for a bit of advice and guidance.
mm,
Um, then he's going into uni for 4 years, so he's kind of looking towards the next 5 years. Bit of just general guidance, really. We've got a few bullet points, if you can see on the screen, roughly what we want to talk about.
yeah,
But if we go off piste, we'll go off piste. It doesn't particularly matter. I've helped
perfect.
Brydon as a coach. I'm a combined events athlete coach. I mean, my throwing knowledge isn't that great, but I've thrown 50 meters 80 as a discus thrower myself, so I've rough
Okay,
idea of what's going on. But yeah,
yeah,
massive respect for
for
throws
sure.
in general. And the stuff you're doing is absolutely fantastic, and I look forward to watching you in the future. Um,
Magic, man. Thank you.
so um, we'll start with some youth development stuff. So
For sure.
I don't want to lead this. I mean, a lot of this is what Brydon brainstormed with me earlier. So kind of want to
And,
pass
and
on to Brydon, whether he wants to ask these questions or I kind of want to take a back seat. This is a Brydon session, primarily.
awesome.
So yeah, Brydon,
Yeah.
why don't you take it away?
Yeah, well, I was talking to Alex earlier. So obviously, as I said, I'm going into a gap year. So essentially, for the full year, I'm going to be just training, and that's
Yeah.
about it. So, but obviously, I was also having a chat with Alex, because obviously I'm still doing my throwing training with John, all that kind of stuff. But one thing I have noticed with John is that John is obviously excellent with the top end, but a lot of his athletes have been at that kind of elite level when he's received them, and I'm having a bit of struggling with kind of because while I'm so new to the sport, I'm not
Sure.
physically or really at the level that I think I'm almost throwing further than I should be at my stage, and that's getting
Okay.
frustrating because I'm not really able to cope with the training, for example, that John's putting me on. So I wanted to talk to you about it because obviously you are now at the elite level, but kind of what you were doing at my stage of progression, not
Mm,
necessarily the distance, obviously different events, but just at that kind of development stage. So I mean, as you can see, the first question is, so what what contributed like to your success during your younger years? So obviously, I mean, you've just said now you've only been professional for 2 years, but like when you were sort of, I mean, I don't know, how old were you when you started throwing?
Yeah, so just a quick question. So you're doing discus, am I right?
Yeah, I'm a discus thrower for the most
Okay,
part, yeah.
so you discus, and how old are you now?
I'm 18, turning 19 in
Okay.
September.
For sure. Okay, yeah. So I think what contributed to my success in my younger years, I think, I played so many different sports, and I can see that now how much of a difference that makes. There's a lot of guys. I mean, you can see it in sort of Eastern Europe and even in America. The guys kind of specialize quite early. There's a lot of opportunity to develop from a young age, and I think that has benefits, but it also has a lot of disadvantages, especially from a movement perspective. You develop the human body, which is a machine of some sort, to only train within certain kind of parameters. And I think, I played rugby, water polo, baseball, soccer, cricket. I kind of did as much as I could, and not intentionally. I think I loved, my parents were really promotive of doing that, and I loved sport in general. So, anything with the ball, I really enjoyed. And I think, that set me up quite well for shot put, because and I speak shot put, but I think discus is very similar. It's the same. The technique is different, but it's very similar as well. So, a lot of the time, the guys they get into this very heavy weightlifting training, and, they forget that the weightlifting is a supplementary training to your event. And I think my coach is he's quite, ahead of his time with regards to that. There's a lot of guys still now that are pushing, the very heavy stuff, and the Kraus is doing it, Kovacs is doing it, the Walsh is doing it. So it's not the only way to do it, but you have to. A lot of athletes kind of get lost in that process through injury, boredom, and all these other things, just because you kind of have to. You have to be super strong, and it can kind of get quite difficult. You have to marry the two between the weightlifting and the actual event. So try and make your weightlifting as sort of as much of an accessory to your event as much as it being like a separate powerlifting thing. So try and get exercises that are very specific to what you're trying to achieve. So I think, like I said, in the younger years, I think doing a lot of different things was really helpful to me. Coordination, balance, rhythm, those sorts of things become quite natural, and then the technique is an addition towards that. It's not like you're learning this whole new thing. It's like, oh, you're really strong in the gym, but now you have to kind of work out how you're gonna train the tendons and stuff, even in the groin to the knee, to kind of work in this unison movement. So even now, still, 18 is so young. I went to university at 18, and I was obviously juggling academics and athletics, and up until 23, I wasn't really I was serious about it. But when I look back now, I didn't really have a structured plan in place. I was kind of just going to the gym, trying to lift as heavy as often as possible, and not that it was a waste of time, but it developed, I suppose, other areas, but it wasn't directly helping with my sports. So I think that the thing for me that I'd suggest is to kind of come up with a 3-year plan, 3 to 4 year plan, and really kind of just commit to that. Don't think it's going to happen in a year, and don't even be too, the success in distance is a byproduct of obviously a really good plan and process, and you do have to be patient with it, as cliche as that sounds. I think, obviously you've got a gap year this year, and that's lovely, but don't make it all about discus. Let that be your primary focus, but really work on developing other parts of yourself. Find out interesting books to read. You have to have more to you than just discus. I've always learned a little bit the hard way, but yeah, it's not enough. The European indoor titles and the personal best and stuff, those are lovely, but it's not enough. You've got to have substance to you in other areas, because it's often a very, very lonely, isolated thing. So make sure you kind of start as young as possible to develop another side of you that interests you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was literally speaking about something because I was thinking, like, obviously, where I have so much time, obviously, it would be good if I could dedicate 7 days a week to training. But obviously, that wouldn't be productive. Maybe for the first month or two, it would be, but eventually, I would just become a bit bored. So I was just thinking, like, so obviously I don't want to waste time being in the situation I'm in, but what would like a general, like what should I be doing, if that makes sense? Like, because I don't want to waste the time, but at the same time, I don't want to put myself in a position where I don't like what I'm doing anymore.
For sure. So you're talking from a weightlifting or technique training perspective, or are you talking about activities outside of that?
I suppose just general social life, or just outside of athletics life to athletics. Because I mean, like throwing wise, it will be 3 days a week. Just
perfect.
Same 3 days with John. That's just set. Then everything else is kind of up to me, really. But it's like, I mean, we'll talk about where and when later. But just how should my kind of like outside of athletics to athletics life look, sort of thing? Like, how did you kind of, obviously you were at university, but how did you kind of weigh it out?
Yeah, so I think, you know, it depends on the individual, and even the individual that changes, you know. So sometimes you'll get into this mode of being like feeling really productive, feeling really motivated, and you must ride that wave. And, you know, when you can be 100% focused on athletics 100% of the time, but that can include, you know, getting a good night's sleep, or, you know, sometimes the best thing you can do is to go out and eat a meal that you enjoy, whether that's perceived to be healthy or not. I mean, even when I think back to university, there were nights where I'd get like, you know, super drunk, and that's obviously not good for athletic development. But you know, you're also a human, and I'm not suggesting you go and do that, but you've got to still live your life. You've still got to go out and experience social life, and you've got to like understand how you interact with the world, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and, you know, kind of let the sport guide you and keep you grounded. But you still, you know, you still got to interact with people, and really focus on developing yourself as an individual, and let sport be a tool in that, like maybe your primary tool in doing that. You know, because when I think about it, I've always been really interested in like in movement, in, you know, breath work, meditation, these sorts of things, you know, the spiritual side, which I suppose is completely separate to sport in many ways, but it's so integrated with, just because of who I am, you know. And it's like, if you're showing up to events motivated, healthy, good rest, you're eating good food, you've got good relationships, you're not in stressful environments, like those are the factors that I think separate people, because not a lot of people look at that. They kind of just, they want to be given a program, and they want to feel like they're working hard. And pain isn't always an indication that you're working hard. You know, there's discipline in so many other areas. Are you going to bed at a certain time? Are you waking up at a certain time? Are you eating at the right time? And, you know, you only got to do it 80% right. You know, you're not a robot. And I think that's what makes it fun. You know, you got to work these things out for yourself. But let the sport be the tool, but don't overthink it either. You know, if there's something that interests you, invest a little bit of time in that, but keep up your training, keep up the technique, and try and socialize with other people that are also, you know, on a similar path. I think that helps a lot. But you want to have friends outside of the sports scene as well. I think that's super important.
Yeah, well, I mean, in all fairness, I think most of my friends are outside of athletics anyway. I have got the odd one in, but I mean, the thing is, I mean, the throwing community in England, it's very kind of quite tight knit. I mean, certainly the boys across my age group, every summer for the last couple of years, we will go and at someone's house, stay there for a week, like whether we're from up north in England or down south. Like, we're quite a tight knit group, even though we're all competitors. So yeah,
for sure. No, that's good. You know, there's pros and cons to everything, but I think, you know, generally it's really good to have people that, you know, are like-minded and striving for the same things. I think, you know, peer learning, and if you can manage a relationship to be competitive but still good friends and help each other and learn from each other, I think that's one of the best environments you can be in.
Yeah, I mean, my training group alone, I mean, we've got 2 boys in particular, like as well as me, who are the 3 of us are all discus throwers, and we're all kind of pushing on that international kind of, or already have pushed that international kind of qualification set. So I mean, currently my aim is for the next, I mean, ultimately the end goal is to eventually make the Olympics. I mean, I've had quite a few unfortunate circumstances of the last few years. So in 2021, in the space of about 3 or 4 months, my cousin died of cancer at 19, and then my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And it's been a pretty rough couple of years. So even though I'm almost exceeding what my expectations are, I'm also not meeting them at the same time. So
For sure.
the end goal is to hopefully reach the Olympics. I'm aiming for LA 2028, but I would like to reach the under 23 Europeans, which I believe are next year.
Okay.
So that's something I'm working towards over my gap year before I go to America. But obviously I have my goals, but then I also want to have my outside of athletics life just to keep the balance and make sure that I'm not going to drive myself around the bend.
For sure. I think, I mean, of course, you have to have those goals. I think it's important and it keeps you going, you know, especially when you don't feel like doing it. But yeah, don't attach too much to it. I mean, I only really started representing internationally at 25, 26, you know, so it's like, of course, it's lovely to go. It's lovely to see that steady progression, but you know, there's so many ways to do it. So, you know, of course, it must keep you focused, but don't attach too much to it. If you don't make it, don't think, oh, well, that's it. You know, there's no ways I can come back from that. I think at 23 years old, I had a shot put personal best of 16:91, which, you know, I didn't really know much about the sport at that time. It's from an international perspective, but if a 23-year-old came up to me and said they had a personal best of 16:91, they wanted to go professional, you know, I'd kind of be like, yikes, okay, good luck. You know, it's quite difficult. It's difficult. You know, you've had so many years to try and make it, and 16:91 now is, you know, it's nowhere almost. Have goals, of course, it's so important, but don't attach too much to it, because it's not the end of the world if you don't kind of hit them as soon as you want to, you know. The beautiful thing about our sport is that you can, if you have a really sustainable, healthy training schedule, workout schedule, you can go until you're 34, 35. You look at Kovacs now, he threw his best at 33 years old. It's fantastic. So I try to focus on making a sustainable plan more than anything. And the question I always remind myself, especially when you go through sort of slumps of performance, is like, would you be willing to work 8 years for one really good result at a really big meet? And if the answer is yes, you've got to keep reminding yourself of that, because you almost want to perform at every competition, and you have to have that mindset. But if you had worked consistently for 8 years for one major championship medal, then don't get too caught up on the little kind of setbacks along the way. You know, you kind of you only need one good throw at one good competition, and it can change your life. So consistency and sustainability, I've learned, is the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because just speaking there, if you were saying a 23-year-old throwing around 16 meters, I mean, I was looking at your past performances, like seasons best with Alex, and it said on there, so in 2018, you threw 15:77. Obviously, your PB was just under 17 at the time.
Yeah.
But then the next year, which I think you turned 23, you threw 19 meters.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, also, and then you weren't even professional then. So what was it in that year, or what did you find? There you go. So, I mean, like, there's two different things. What was critical, and then what was helpful in kind of getting from that stage, and then what kind of made the 4 meter jump?
Yeah, so I think university was difficult for me, man. I took quite a academically intensive course, and so in my final 2 years, when I was doing my honors, athletics kind of had to take a back seat. And because I was at such a low level relatively, I wasn't getting invited to national camps or national events. So you're kind of like, well, I'm working super hard to, look kind of cool in your university, but then you still got to sit that exam and you got to know what the hell's going on. So I prioritized academics in the last 2 years, and that's why I think it kind of took a bit of a slump. And then when I graduated at the end of 2018, that was when I kind of decided also it was like a gap year after my studies to be like, okay, listen, I'm going to give this 100% and see what happens. And I moved up about 6 hours away from where my family was. There was a coach up there that I was trying to get in, that I was in contact with. And he helped me for about a month, and then he got mouth cancer. And so he stopped coaching. And, I kind of was like, okay, well, if I don't have a technical base, I'm going to have to just get super strong. And that's why I was pushing super hard in the weight room, doing still like explosive lifts. But it was only kind of then, because I had no other frame of reference, and I probably was working harder then than I am now, but I wasn't doing I was getting caught up in the weights. It's like, oh, am I getting stronger? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? But the technique wasn't necessarily getting better. So I mean, you can improve. You're 18. You're going to keep growing for a few years in terms of your muscle maturity and things like that. So you're going to improve even if you just stay consistent doing what you're doing now. But to try find those exercises that, one, will make you a better athlete, two, will make you stronger, and all those sorts of things. Those things will kind of assist in your natural development. So the sooner you can find the things that will help you and keep you injury proof, it's not about just getting strong. You got to keep the tendons strong. You got to keep the body moving well. There's so much else to it. It's not just going to the gym. It's like, how many hours of sleep are you getting a night? That's probably one of the most important things, I think, for me. Sleep's really important, and I love it, and I really think it helps me from an emotional stability perspective, from a recovery perspective, and just everything. So if you can prioritize one thing, it would be sleep, and the rest generally gets better.
Well, there you go. I mean, in this gap here, I'm actually moving away. It's going to be a bit of a tricky year, really, because whilst I am having the gap here, I'm actually moving down to the coast. So, I mean, I appreciate there's longer journey, but I mean, it's still going to be about an hour and 40 each way to training. And then,
okay.
Even weights room, right? There aren't many great weights rooms in England, let alone like where I live and where I'm moving to. It's a very old town in the middle of nowhere. So finding that kind of balance, and again, I'm in a bit of a situation because where John is such a good coach, obviously I'm desperate to be with him, but he is so unwell. I mean, he had another heart attack back in November. I don't know if you had been by that.
Wow. Okay.
So, I know he's just had COVID. I mean, he's back out now, but the guy's turning 18 next year, I think. So he's not well. So it's as well, whilst I'm looking forward to this year, it's also preparing myself, like Alex said, for the next 5 years. I want to get myself to a point where I can have my own input on my training. Like, I want to know what I'm doing.
For sure.
I want to learn my mistakes early, so I'm not sitting here at 25 going, oh, I should have been doing this, I should have been doing that.
For sure. But I think also don't be too hard on that, because I think, I'm still finding mistakes, and I think technically, that's what I suppose I love and hate about a technical sport, is that the technique remains the same, your feeling changes and your body changes. And so it's like a puzzle that's ever changing and that you're constantly trying to solve. So you got to try, instead of kind of rule-based approach, try and find more principle-based approaches. So especially in our sport, you got to understand, okay, lift your right foot, it must be wide, it must be this, land with your feet close together, etc., etc. Those things are helpful to know, but you can't think of more than, I can't think of more than two things when I'm in the circle. In the competition, maybe not even more than one. So you got to really focus on your feeling. And once you find that efficient movement, you go, oh, that's what that feels like. And then you got to try to keep that feeling. Rhythm and feeling, especially in the technical sport, is so important. So, I get you. I think you've got to have a healthy relationship with your coach, that you can have your input and understand. But then when all else fails, don't think too much. Thinking slows you down so much. Just try and find that feeling, that smooth, rhythmic feeling.
Yeah.
And also, with it's, I suppose it's horrible to speak about, but it's a very big reality when you do become, the next 5, even sooner, in a few years, if you do become professional and start going on all these tours and whatnot, it's difficult. You're going to have to do it without your coach, because it's difficult for 70-year-olds to kind of keep up with the training, the traveling schedule. So, if he's going to be 80, if he's 80 now, it's going to be difficult for him. So you're going to have to kind of understand your technique well enough to understand how to correct it and whatnot if he's not there. Because often the cases where your coaches can't come along because the competitions don't pay for them, or because they don't feel up to it. Yeah. So you've got to understand what you're looking for, I suppose, from a technical perspective.
Also just talking on that coaching thing, that I mean, obviously you said you've changed coach quite a few times. I'm in a fortunate position where my original coach knew John, but I mean, the likelihood is John isn't going to be around for much longer. That's the likelihood.
For sure.
So, how do I even go about? Particularly because in the UK there aren't any coaches. There's not. I mean, there's the odd one, but there's
Shots
Sorry,
fired. Okay, yeah.
Try not to take that personally.
No, it's fine. I'll forgive you. Yeah, it's fine.
There's not many throwing coaches. So, like,
Okay.
how do I go about making contact, making connections with the people outside of Britain? Because I mean, there's only, I mean, Britain's next best coach trains in Qatar. Like, it's
it's a big problem. So like I said, I mean, I left 6 hours. I left my family. You know, I had to move 6 hours away to try and find a guy, and you know that didn't go well. And then luckily, I've only ever had two coaches. It was the guy that I moved for, and then my current coach now. So, you know, I suppose I was unlucky to not have a coach prior to that. But since finding my Italian coach, he's been exceptional. But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I think, you know, I use social media to kind of get in touch with a lot of Italian athletes and say, listen, this is who I am. I'm trying to find a coach. I didn't even care who it was at that point. But yeah, you might, you know, it's almost like a psychologist. You got to go maybe through many. Sometimes you're lucky on your first try. Sometimes you got to go through a few coaches from you know, emotional intelligence to general technical understanding. There's so many factors to a coach-athlete relationship, and it's never perfect. But you've got to, I think, understand what you're looking for in a coach, and then try and find the three most important things, and kind of deal with the lack of the rest potentially. You know, but from an international perspective, I'm not too sure where you'd look. I don't know the discus too well. I don't know good discus coaches.
I mean, all I know is that, I mean, a lot of the states are obviously quite popular. That's why I'm going there for university. But it's like, so the best ones on the scene really are, I suppose, you would look at Gerd Cantor. Obviously, he's training chair, and then and then obviously you have, I mean, he just retired recently. Can't remember his name. The
Vestin.
Vestin. Yeah. So I mean, it is a bit of a sticky situation, because I mean, I am with one of the top coaches. Like, I'm not even with a good, like, I'm with one of the best coaches, but then it's like,
but if I were you, I'd sit down with him and say, listen, you know, obviously he knows you're taking a gap year and you're moving on, and say, you know, what if you had to write a one-page kind of document on the most important things you've learned in your career of being a coach, what would they be? What would the most important points be? And kind of get him to maybe think about that, if he is willing to do that, or even just verbally voice noting you or whatever. And I mean, that's, I don't know how long he's been coaching for, but you know, it's obviously a long time. He's done really well with a lot of his other athletes. So to get that knowledge, you know, summarized, it's a pretty good start. You know, you already got an upper hand than a lot of other guys. And are you going to be doing athletics in the States for your university?
Yeah, I'm going out there on scholarship. That's the plan. So I mean,
okay.
I'm not
Where are you
sure.
going? Which university?
That's the thing. So because my last season was so poor, obviously because I missed so much training with my dad falling ill and everything, my scholarship offers weren't really what they could have been.
Sure.
So I mean, hopefully I'm still going to get into a Division 1 school, but obviously there are some Division 2 programs which are really good. And as far as I'm concerned, no matter where I go in the States, as long as John's still here, he will be my coach remotely. Like I will still be going to him for advice.
For sure.
But so yeah, I mean, as of right now, I won't know where I'm going to uni until probably around December time. But
no, that's cool. But try prioritize, like I said, write down what you want from a coach and see if you do have options. Try and pick that. But be careful in the US. You know, there's a lot of pressure by the universities on the coaches to get you good in a short period of time. And you know, what's good for the university in a short period might not be good for you as an athlete in the long period. So try and manage that. There's been a lot of criticism about the NCAA.
Well, that is kind of potentially why I'm thinking of going to a lower university, particularly in the first year or so, because where the big teams, or particularly the major schools, they want you to do shot, disc, and hammer. Like they want you to do everything because it gets them more points.
Exactly.
Whereas when you go to the lower universities, because their teams are smaller, they're more focused on the individuals rather than the team itself. So
For sure.
particularly for the first 2 years, if I can be at a smaller university, then once I'm at a stage where I'm confident enough to compete at these bigger events, I can transfer. Because I mean, sure, if I was already in an elite position, I would just try and go to Division 1, like some of the
For sure.
athletes do, but I'm not. So I'm going to be careful and try not to get burnt out, because that's what happens to them.
Definitely. Honestly, I think that would be the best advice that I could give you, is to try and find a system that is going to keep you interested. Stimulation in professional sports, probably one of the most important factors from a longevity perspective, because you're doing the same gym training, generally the same technique, in the same size circle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So whether that's training with different people or training at different stadiums, or like, you got to do what you got to do to make sure that you stay interested. I think if you can finish a university career and still be passionate about the sport, that's like, you're already, I think, in the top 50%, because a lot of people just lose their passion. They either get too caught up on their results, or they get too caught up on so many other things that they kind of just lose interest in it. So do what you need to do to kind of just stay passionate about it. That would be my biggest suggestion.
All right, perfect. I mean, I think Alex will be better off with this section in terms of talking about it, like this next section.
It was great listening to you two. I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, let me just go up the.
Well, yeah. If you want to butt in, you're welcome to. If you want to.
Oh, I mean, I think we've covered
free flowing.
Yeah, I think we've covered some of this as well. Yeah. So building on that stimulus stuff. Just to not. I don't think it's tedium, because you clearly love the sport, but yeah, as you said, I think like once you've been doing it for nearly a decade, I can't relate in the same way you can, but for example, my job, I'm a maths teacher and I've been doing it for 12 years. And now I'm probably getting to the point where it's like, oh, okay, I'm doing the same kind of maths to 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And it's just a bit, I've seen this a million times now. And yeah, I 100% agree. It's all about like keeping it fresh and trying things in different ways. And,
For sure.
So what training exercises really? I mean, you talked about training different locations with different people. The fact you're doing this and you're generously spending time talking about this stuff is testament in itself. But do you have any
Thank you,
secret sauce exercises that you're like, wow, this is it breaks up, this is like a go-to thing, or you feel like, yeah, I really want to do this kind of session today? Part of like building that well-rounded, I mean, not well-rounded athlete. I think you're kind of, if I'm paraphrasing, it's like well-rounded person as well. I think that probably leads to a better competitor as well.
Definitely, yeah.
So I mean, you can go completely outfield. You talked about like spiritual meditation-y type stuff before, but I mean, is there any types of like exercises or just activities you like doing, whether it's off-season, pre-comp, post-comp, anything really?
Yeah. Sure, yeah. So I think from I'll start off with the sort of, I suppose, weight training stuff. We keep it pretty simple. And I've only kind of learned how unorthodox it is, and after speaking to a lot of other guys, but it's a complicated system. And to be honest, I'm in the, my coach he gives us a spreadsheet of the training, and I don't even know the system well enough to be like, okay, before competition, this is what we do. I know in the off season what we do, because that stays the same. But it's usually revolving around sort of like a hip snatch or half snatch. So you don't start with it from the ground, but kind of from the knees and snatch. So I found that to be quite an explosive exercise. That's really good for us. We do, and obviously this is shot put, so I'm not 100% sure how it relates to the disc either. But we do a behind the neck press, so it's not a behind the neck jerk, because my coach's thing is obviously all about longevity as well and keeping the body healthy. And so without, if you jerk, you can push guys up to 200, but I've never gone above 100. You start on your toes, and it's just a little rhythmic bounce, and then it's behind the neck press. So you kind of just get that sort of dynamic side of it by starting on your toes, and then you just push above your head. And like I said, I haven't gone above 100 on that exercise. I do most of my working sets on 90. Started out on like 70, but you got to do, like I started that at 26. So it depends. At 18, that might be different for you. We do bench press as well. And obviously for us, a lot of the guys, they'll bench, 250 kgs plus. But in our sport specifically, it's a small detail. But instead of benching like this, we bench with our elbows out, because obviously that's where you push from. So we'll go way lighter, but it's way more applicable to our sport. And that's why, like, it's those little things that you got to kind of think about. It's like, it's not about going into the gym and, being the strongest guy in the gym, because you're a flipping discus thrower. You're not a weightlifter. Yeah. And I think that's super important to remember. And then we do squats. We don't do full squats. I've only ever done, with my Italian coach, we've only ever done 90-degree squats. So we don't go sort of ass to grass type thing. And obviously, because in our sport, it can be healthy to do maybe in the off season, but really lightly, just to kind of grease your joints or grease the groove, so to speak. But when we start doing weighted stuff, it'll always be 90 degrees. And I've never gone over 200 kgs. We do most of our working sets on, we'll do like a pyramid type approach in the off season. So we'll do like 864, 468. And then the next training session, we'll go 753, 357, and then 642, 246. And then that weight, what we'll do for 6 reps on the first day, we'll shift that to 7 reps for the next. So it's kind of like it's a pyramid, but with increasing weight. And we do that for 6 sessions. So it's kind of, we only do that twice a week. So it's like a 3-week type thing, but there's so many different ways to get strong, but that's kind of what we have found. It's kept us strong for quite long. And then after that kind of outdoor, the off season training, we do normally 5x5 to maintain what we've built in the off season. And then we do, so it was behind the neck press, hip snatch, 90-degree squat. We do high pulls, so from the ground just up to here. That's in the off season as well, just to kind of, I suppose, develop a bit of upper back strength, especially with the shot. You kind of want to be proud with it, and I think that translates to the disc as well. You kind of want to be tall and long out the back of the circle. We do this other one. It's called Molina. It's kind of a made up exercise, but start off with 2.5 kgs. We don't go heavier than 5, but I'd suggest starting really light, just with, the small weight plates. And I really love this exercise because it's one of the ones that it's really athletic, and you just hold them and you kind of do like a backstroke with it. So let me just show you. So you kind of go like this, backwards, and then forwards. And what that does is it's just like, it's a super, can you hear me? Sorry, I took my headphones out there. You good? Really, it's like a mobilization. When you do it, you'll feel it. But ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your arm as high as possible and sort of separate, because you want your body, when I think of, especially in the technique, you kind of split it up into 4 parts, each limb and their section attached to the body. And you want those things to be moving different, especially in the rotational sport. You need to separate the hips from the shoulders, and you've got to generate that kind of torsion in the midsection. And any exercise that you can do to kind of build strength and security in that section, I think is going to be worth doing. So we call it Molina. That's a really good one. But yeah, like I say, these are the things that we do. I don't even know if they're the best. They've worked for us. And, sometimes we'll get to training and my coach will be like, okay, this is what we're doing today. And we just do it. So it's like it's not even necessarily completely systematic. He's almost like a mad scientist in a way. You know, we kind of get there. He says, "This is what we're doing." He's got it all worked up in his head. He doesn't write much down. He's got a really good eye for these things. You know, even it's like, oh, you know, keep the elbows up, do this, do that. Like it's small details, and he knows exactly what he wants. It's not that he's not sharing it. I think to keep his secrets, because we spoke at a conference and he told them literally everything, but the people can't believe how little we actually do. But I suppose the principles are just kind of keeping the body loose, developing strength where you need it. But ultimately, if you can prioritize the technique, do that as much as possible. Because especially while you're young and especially while you can get those reps in, the technique is so much more difficult than the gym work. When we're in the off season, I can't wait to go into the gym because it's like, oh, we can switch the brain off almost, you know. That mind body connection is the most difficult thing to do, because you know when you're trying something really difficult, it's like just lift your arm. You're like, I'm flipping trying, but you're just kind of stuck in that movement pattern. So we can talk more about that, like specific exercises at some point, you know, but I'm sure there's going to be a pretty good scientific plan once you get to uni. But I can try and be a bit more descriptive. But yeah, that's just a general overview. We also do reverse bench. So if you're lying face down flat on the bench, elbows out, and you kind of lift up. So it's like a bent over row, but you take out, you kind of just isolate the top. And again, you know, it's about creating stability in the shoulder. So don't go heavy. Otherwise you start using your rhomboids and everything. You kind of want to push your head into the board and just use your rear delts and upper back. You want to try to keep the rest of the body as relaxed as possible. Because you'll see in the disc, you know, you need that stability and that long stability to really get that separation between the shoulders and hips. So yeah, that's kind of the training side of it. We do like, they call it field work. So we'll do like overhead throws with the shot. It's more kind of like athletics based, just so we don't lose the movement of things. So we'll do like overhead throws. Have you ever done hurdle work? So like hurdle drills.
Nothing apart from like warm up, like just to mobilize the hips, like just a couple of hurdle balls, nothing before. No.
Okay, yeah, because we can chat more about that as well, but there's so much on YouTube. But basically all it is, it's about, you know, getting your leg high, moving down, and you know, obviously getting your hips moving. But I found that to be a huge help for me because it created a lot of strength in my hips. Because you know, if you don't do these, it's so easy to actually do, and you do them repetitively, you get obviously stronger in your hips, and it allows you to be a lot longer with your limbs because your body doesn't try and keep it close. You can get longer, and obviously the longer you are, the more speed and that you can generate. So that's something we do just to kind of, so you're not just squatting, you're actually moving from side to side, going up, going down, bringing it up, moving over. It has to be quite dynamic. So we do that. We do standing jumps into the long jump pit, triple jumps into the long jump. It's also not trying to break world records, but just to try and keep yourself reasonably athletic. Also, one of the ones that I really love for the core sections, we take obviously the hammer throw, we take the hammer and we do walking hammer, and basically that just creates that like rotational. You're training your core in 360 degrees. So I found that to be really beneficial, and it also it takes you out of the kind of like unilateral movement that you're doing in the gym for the Olympic weightlifting stuff. You know, you've got to actually put your body into other angles and whatnot. So I found that to be quite a beneficial day from a training perspective. And we do that twice a week in the off season and once a week when we're in season. So that's nice to kind of just bring everything together and rhythmic runs. So we're not going 100% sprint. We try to build up to 70% and just try to feel good and smooth, and then slow down over 60 to 80 meters. So yeah, don't forget that you're an athlete. You got to be somewhat athletic. It's not just being super strong, and that helped my throw. That helped.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what I mean. John has kind of, he's always been very big on the athleticism more than anything. Because I mean, like I mean, obviously you saw our group. I am by far the biggest and fattest there by quite a considerable margin. Like they're all very lean, like athletes. I mean, even if you look at obviously Lawrence now, we're just a walking machine, but when he was in his youth, Lawrence Okoye, he was 120 kilos and could do a 3.50 meter standing long jump.
Wild. Yeah.
The athleticism was just unrivaled. I mean, the guy, he could do 100 meters in under 11 seconds. So obviously, there are people like that who you're never going to be able to. Like, they're just different levels of athletes. But there's
For
always been a
sure.
big athleticism approach now. I mean, and that's kind of
Mm.
this year isn't really getting really strong. That's down to America, really. But for this year,
Sure.
it's about getting fit, getting a bit more muscle tone, just getting better in shape and becoming
Yeah.
better athlete. Because when I was younger, I used to be in really good shape, but I ended up putting on loads of weight and becoming a bit more lethargic. And that's kind of what, as of this week, as I finish my exams, I want to focus on. I want to focus on getting quicker, getting a bit stronger, and a lot more powerful and more mobile.
Awesome, yeah, and make that a fun process. Man. Don't, it shouldn't be this like, I got to tick that off and carry on. Make it fun. Feeling good within yourself it's so important. And I remember there's that when we do those rhythmic runs, there's like a 30-meter period where you're at your 70%. You're like, holy shit, I'm actually feeling really good. My body's moving. I'm in no pain, but I just like, everything's smooth. And it's fantastic when you feel your body moving well. It's such a privilege. So enjoy that process. Don't look at it as a chore. And if you ever get doubtful, just remember, there's guys that only start taking this stuff seriously at 24. So enjoy it, and just by being consistent, you'll be better than most people. Seriously, the other thing that I really learned is consistency over intensity is way more important. Don't underestimate that. In 2019, I was going super hard, and then I had to take some days off because I had a bit of a niggle in my shoulder and then my back. It's like if I was just going consistent and going sort of 75% over that, 75% over those days that I had to take off because I had pain here and there, it's not worth it. Just really make sure you're getting in there, doing what you can, moving well, and don't get too focused on the heavy weight. Focus on how you're moving the weight, because you're only throwing 2 kgs. You don't need a 300 kg bench press. You don't need a 200 kg bench press. Focus on moving the weight well and efficiently, and that'll cross over into your sport. Because even Lawrence, he's beautiful to look at, man. That guy's an absolute unit, but he sacrificed mobility for size.
Oh yeah, I mean, John's.
That's.
John's is it's just like it's just John's always sitting there telling me, like, did you see Lawrence on the weekend? Yep, terrible. He can't move. He's too big. He's too this. He's just such. I mean, credit to him. He's ridiculously powerful and strong, but technically he's not got it. And then he throws. I mean, he's got the best arm in the world. I mean, he throws. I mean, there are videos of Lawrence throwing 60 meters on a standing throw, now his turn's only adding 4 meters to his throw. Like, he's just so strong, but he can't move.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's a trade-off that you want to make, you can. But yeah, there's nothing better. There's a lot of guys that have thrown further than me, and it's impressive. But I think what a lot of people are interested in about my technique specifically is you got this guy that's 1.9 meters tall, 15 kgs, that's throwing the same as what guys that were 2.0 meters tall, 150 kgs throwing. So there's something beautiful about seeing efficient movement. And the nice thing about that is your longevity of your career is better. You feel better during the process, and your sport's going to come to an end. So you've got to still be a human being when your sport ends. You don't want to be having a bad knee or a bad back or a bad this. Man, it's fun while it lasts, but you've got to. And it depends on your mentality. There's a lot of guys that are like, I don't care, I'll do anything for a gold medal, but that's not me, man. I'll sacrifice that if I can have another 50 years in good, healthy shape.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like you look at people like, I mean, he's probably my favorite thrower to watch, but Daniel Stoll, he's 170 kilos. Like, I mean, you look at people like, I'm not sure if you'll know him, but Jeff Capes. He's the British record holder in shot put. I mean, he was the world's strongest man, but I mean, he's now 70 odd. He's bedbound.
Yeah,
He's in terrible health.
Yeah.
Just because
and for some, exactly. And like I say, for some people, it's impressive that level of dedication and you know, the fact that they're willing to sacrifice, I suppose, their older years for the glory of their younger. But it depends on how you kind of look at your sports, how you look at your life, and how you want to kind of choose to live that. There's a lot more to life than sport and achievement in sport, you know. So if you're lucky enough to feel that, you know, you can actually have both, I think, if you realize it early enough, and that's the beauty.
Yeah.
And then, so I suppose from a non-training perspective, it differs, man. I'm on a meditation journey, and I'm not very good at it. I find it extremely difficult. So I've obviously got a lot to benefit from it. So yeah, it's still very early days for me there, but it's interesting. And the nice thing about that is it just filters into every area of your life. It's not just training or sports. So that's great. And yeah, whatever else you like to do. I love swimming, just being in, you know, rivers, lakes, all those oceans, whatever, all those sorts of things. I love that. Being by myself in nature, reading a good book, listening to good music, whatever it is that you like, man, make time for it and do it often. Do it really often, because, you know, overtraining is worse than undertraining sometimes. It's so much easier to overtrain.
Yeah. I mean, just got to keep that balance, really. I mean,
For sure.
yeah, because I mean, I could easily for a few months work every single day, but you would eventually just get bored of it, and then you would not want to do it anymore.
For sure.
So,
100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good insight, because I mean, like, a lot of people have been saying to me, if you want to make it to the top or you want to get to a good level, you need to dedicate every month of your life for it. And then hearing this is kind of like, it's a bit of a relief almost, because like it has been kind of a stress on my mind, because like, not necessarily like it's the be all and end all of making it professional, but you know, my university, it's quite dependent on my athletics. So
sure.
I have got to be at least to a relatively high level, because it's all scholarship based, and without the scholarship I can't afford to go. So
For sure.
and it is quite good to hear that it's not actually 24/7 365. Like it is quite good to hear that, like, because I that was a worry I had about the sport itself, because it is quite a lonely sport. I mean,
Definitely.
I mean, in the day, it's not. I mean, I played rugby for 6-7 years, and like that team, there's none of that in athletics.
No,
It's not. It's
no.
particularly in throwing. It's quite alone. It's the same thing over and over again, and typically the group training aren't that big once you get to the high level. It appears it's usually quite small groups because you're focusing so hard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, I agree with people when they say you got to be focused, and it is 24/7. But what people don't kind of factor in is the fact is like doing things that you enjoy as part of training. It's like it's part of recovery. It's like, you know, if you sleep a little longer, if you sleep 9 hours a night, that is you focusing on your performance. If you're like spending time with the people you love and it's a positive environment for you, that is you focusing on training. So yeah, it's just like you got to kind of look at training as the way that I kind of look at it is that, yes, if you can kind of see it as a self-mastery tool, if you can see it to be like, okay, you know, who do I want to become and how can I use the sport to make me, you know, be that person? You'll never go wrong. It'll always serve you. And I think that's the important thing. Do it as long as you enjoy it and as long as it's kind of teaching you something, and not being destructive. You know, do it as long as you can.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's good to hear, because I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, I have always been not conscious of the fact, like, a lot of these athletes, because I mean, I've been saying to my friends and family members, like, the likelihood is with the sport I do, I'm probably going to need a double hip replacement and probably a new knee at the age of 40 because of how much we use it. Like, so, and also, like, it's just nice to hear, because I mean, I've also been quite nervous of the fact, like, I mean, I was a very early grower. I mean, I was already 6'3" at the age of 12 or 13. But I haven't really grown too much since, which isn't a problem. I'm not a small person, but like now when I'm on the throwing circuit, even in just the UK, I am the smallest one there. I mean, there's one boy from Wales who is 7'2". Like, so it's nice to hear also from a not particularly massive individual that's not really a problem. I mean, particularly in the shop where it appears the heaviest guys are usually the best. It's just that does put a bit of confidence in my abilities then more, because I'm like, when
Good
you look
man,
at the
yeah.
discus, I mean, like Che, I mean, he is on top of the world at the moment, and he is 6'10", wherever he is. Like, you've got to be able to compete with those people, but even with the setbacks. So
Definitely. How old is Che now?
24. So he'll, if I make it, he'll still be
Yeah.
on the circuit. He's not very old.
For sure. Yeah. But the thing is like, it's the same with me now with Krauser and Kovacs and Walsh. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
if you're going to be there, if you're going to be consistent, your time will come. You know, it's like a lot of guys, they want their whole career. They want to be at the top for their whole career. There's not a lot of people that do that. Krauser didn't even do that. You know, when Krauser came onto the scene, he was good, but he wasn't at the top. He's been on the top for a long time, and he's a phenom. You know, he really is incredible. Kovacs is great. Walsh is great, but I mean, even Walsh, you know, he missed out on a medal last year. Kovacs, you know, I've just beaten. He just threw 2080 in Poland.
Yeah.
So, you know, these guys are humans. The guys that are the most consistent for the longest time are the guys that end up on top. And that's why I say sustainability of your program and making sure you're enjoying the process. It's not always going to be easy, but if it's meaningful and you take time to do things that are important to you, there's going to come a day where you're going to have that big throw at an important meet, and then you're going to have achieved what you've been working for.
Yeah.
And you're going to realize that nothing changes. So unless you're changing in that process, those medals, those achievements really do mean nothing. And sometimes it's good to find out the hard way, because it really forces you to place emphasis on the beautiful moments in between. It's important. That's probably the best. The thing that I can emphasize the most is that, man, make the, you know, it's like, oh, enjoy the journey, and it's difficult, but if you can kind of change through that process. There's a beautiful quote that I read the other day that I flipping loved, and was success is not about what you achieve, but who you become. And I think if you can kind of embody that through your training, I don't think you can go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's just really, really good to hear. I mean, I mean, there is
also trust your gut, man. If you wake up and you're not feeling good, you know, and you've got a good relationship with your coach and you can express that, you know, it's important. Don't underestimate the insight you have into how you feel and what you're doing. You know, if you feel like you've got to push and potentially tear your ACL or, you know, get a hip replacement, chances are you're doing something wrong. Don't be scared to say, hey, this is not feeling right. You know, is this normal? I mean, you can reach out to me, or if you've got other friends or if you've got other people you can trust, reach out to them and speak to them about it. It's, you know, sport's supposed to make you feel better. You're supposed to move better, feel better, be healthier. If you're in pain, you're definitely doing something wrong. The problem is there's going to be periods where you are in pain and you got to be like, oh, maybe I did too much there. And you're kind of always oscillating, but keep in check with yourself, because it's always changing. Like I say, some days your body feels great, other days your body doesn't feel so great. I remember the biggest shock for me, you know, when you think about going to the Olympics and all these like big competitions, you kind of think like you're going to wake up on the day and be ready and feel great and look forward to it. And I remember waking up for the qualification. I mean, it's the biggest day of my life to that point from a sporting perspective, and my back was like tight and so on. I was thinking, oh man, this is not how I envisioned things to go. And then you realize, you know, you get adrenaline in there that you sort of don't even feel that type of thing. But it's those types of things are so interesting, because you realize how much of what you expect is all up here. And then you think, oh, flip, I'm actually not as good as I thought. I feel as good as I thought I was going to be. And then you realize that doesn't even matter, you know. So of course you got to keep managing these things, but it's it never goes the way you think it does, or very rarely anyway.
I mean, I mean, just what you're saying is bleeds just more confidence into me, than that I can trust the process more than anything. Because where I am, so where I was then, now I'm not, and I'm underperforming yet still over. Like, it's just a weird position to be in. But like, where I have fallen behind, I'm not as stressed after having this conversation with you, because I was beginning to worry, like, oh dear God, like what if like this isn't going to work? Like, I mean, I'm not as stressed now that I've had this conversation, because it's certainly Yeah, I mean, just hearing your perspective of it and just your circumstances as well, it's just, yeah, it just takes that pressure off my back.
Good, man. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, to be overperforming, underperforming against whose measurement? It's like even against your own. What are you measuring yourself against? And I battle with that as well. It's like, yeah, I feel in much better shape. I should be throwing more. And it's like, you are where you are, and you can either kind of be despondent and be like, oh, I'm terrible. Or you can be like, why do I feel that way? What can I do? Am I maybe not sleeping well enough? Am I training too hard? Am I training too little? Am I trying to force it too much? A lot of the time you're trying too hard. And that's what I find so funny about the sport, is that it's like almost counterintuitive. Sometimes the less you try, the easier it is. Be careful of placing these expectations on yourself, whether they're your own or they're the people around you, even people you love and trust. It's with scholarship, it can be difficult because you feel like I must throw this to go forward, or I must do that. Be careful with that, because you can place unnecessary pressure on yourself, and that's the type of stuff that can make you stop enjoying the sport.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I'm being particularly careful with the program that I at first choose, because I mean, I've already been warned, because I have got an agent for it, but he has warned me, particularly for the throwers, like, if you're not performing, you are dropped, no matter what the stage. I mean, some boy from our club just got dropped in his last half semester. On his final year, and he's been dropped, so he has to repeat the last year at another university because he wasn't performing. So, like, I am well aware of that, and I do certainly, for the first couple of years, whilst I settle in, adapt to that new environment, I am going to go to a less high level university, because I don't want to be in a position where I'm on the verge of collapse. Like, I'm not going to be able to cope.
For sure. But and you'll notice, he'll drop to a low university, but he'll drop to a low university and he'll do it anyway. I think that's the thing. It's like, just because it doesn't go the way you expect, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Like I said, of course, it's lovely to get a university degree, and it's important, or whatever, from a university diploma degree, whatever you call it. It's lovely to get that, but there's millions of people that don't have that and still live very successful lives. And there's many people that didn't go to university and have done well in athletics besides that. So, yes, it's a very valid point that you could stress about, but you only really know, it's the same in athletics in the season. You only really know whether it's a good or bad season once the season's finished. And you, until then, try stay away from judging it, because otherwise you're going to be riding this roller coaster 24/7, and it's going to take it out of you. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Alex, have you got anything like kind of to go off of that, or?
No, I mean, well, from a coaching point of view, I'm currently finished. I'm a level 2. Okay, let's start that again. The UKA structure, because I'm more interested in combined events, so decathlons, heptathlons, that kind of thing, there isn't necessarily a specialized module for that. There's sprints and hurdles, there's throws, there's jumps and long distance. And so I've had to juggle doing all of the modules. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to do as best job as I can. And so the highest, which is a level 3, which is the event coach specialism in all 3, and I'm currently completing all of them apart from the endurance, just because I feel from a combined events point of view, you need to be able to run, jump and throw. For sure. The 1500, for my personal philosophy, if you're 400 meter fit and you're not fit enough for a 1500, then some kind of training has gone wrong. It's only just under 4 laps. Sure. You should be able to do 4 laps if someone pushed you for it. Anyway, definitely. So it's really, I hear a lot from the UKA governing body, and they're quoting all this literature and all the things you've been talking about, really. If I was to summarize it, it seems to be more of, you're more interested in processes rather than outcomes, building the person, then the athlete, then the competitor, rather than looking at it as like a sport necessarily. It's, you want to move better, higher quality of physical life, by the sounds of it, definitely more long term. And it's it's nice because you hear all this in the seminars and you read the literature and you're like, part of you is okay. Not that I distrust it, but it's really nice seeing an athlete who's actually got this success, actually endorsing it as well. I mean, that's really when you shouldn't have an argument of authority being so powerful. It should, as a maths teacher by day, when I'm not coaching, I'm very much a logic, reason, how you prove things. But yeah, it definitely from an argument authority point of view and from experience, it really does hammer home. But yeah, no, thanks very much.
Pleasure. And I think, sorry, also, these are guiding principles for me. I'm only there because I've made the mistake of placing emphasis on importance, placing importance on performance, and it's difficult, man. Like in the I had a good competition. This is my most recent one, but prior to that, I had 3 really mediocre competitions. And I remember thinking, like, man, I'm sacrificing too much to be doing this poorly. And then it's like, hard work and sacrifice doesn't make you deserving of good results necessarily. There's so much else to it. And and you start going to the extreme, like, man, I can't keep spending like 10, 11 months away from my family or people that I love just for doing this, and they're not doing well. And you think, well, firstly, it's a decision I've made to do it. And, how much am I learning and how much am I changing outside of that? How are you dealing with the disappointments? What do you, there's so much that you can always learn, and it's cliche, and, it's not always easy, but if you try and force yourself to try and process these disappointments and whatnot, it sort of forces you to look from another perspective. Because I did really well in my opening competitions, and I didn't know why, because I was trying harder, if not harder. I was trying as hard, if not harder, in the ones where I didn't do as well. I think, well, what now? And it forces you to look at it with a different eye and approach it from a different perspective. And what I love about the sport, athletics in particular, is just that it's like a microcosm of life, and it's everything is kind of happening in that small little world. And it's one thing to be disappointed in your sport, but if you can kind of learn from that and be great in your life as an individual, that's the greatest success I think that you can have. So try and look at it as an experiment. That's the way that I'm trying to look at it as. And of course you're going to be disappointed, and you need to be disappointed so that you can learn from it, because if you didn't care, you'd learn absolutely nothing from it. So yeah, let it be an experiment, play with it. That I think you're going to learn the most and grow the most from that. And I think growing individually outside of the sport is probably the best thing you can take from it.
So I think, as you said, if you've got some good guiding principles, a lot of it comes down to just your gut feeling.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you got to make those mistakes to understand. It's like, oh, that's how I felt, but I carried on and it didn't really go that well. Maybe I should trust that the next time. And it's all an experiment. I'm by no means made. I'm continually making mistakes and continually learning and trying to learn. So I'm not preaching to you. I'm sort of speaking to myself and hoping that in some ways you can learn a little bit from that.
No, it sounds like you're a scholar of the sport, which is exactly what you need to be, especially at that high level.
Sure.
It's definitely an ongoing process.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think we've actually covered all this stuff. We talked about strength and conditioning and other exercises and that kind of stuff. No, incredibly thorough and helpful.
Magic.
So, I mean, yeah, what's your plans for the season? Do you have any goals you're looking forward to? Any competitions you're really hyped up for?
Yeah, man, the World Champs I think is going to be a big one for us.
Nice.
And of course, just qualifying for Paris next year. I think that's also quite an important one. Man, I'd love to break 22 again. I'm in good shape, so when the time's right, I'm sure that will come through. But I think kind of just trying to be disciplined in the training, and I'm certainly, like, even when I first started out with these competitions, man, you get so anxious and uptight before these competitions because you want to do well, and you don't even enjoy where you are, who you're with, the beautiful hotels you stay at, the beautiful venues you're at, and you almost feel guilty for enjoying that because, like, come on, man, you're here to work. But once you realize that those things are part of it, I'm really learning to try and be a little bit more loose and allowing myself to enjoy those things. And if the competition goes well, fantastic. If it doesn't, I don't attribute it to that, because the hard work's already been done. So, yeah, like I say, I'm trying really hard to make it a good process because, like I say, I see my family for 1 month a year. Actually, yeah, a couple months ago, I split up with my partner because it's so difficult. I'm never in one place longer than 3 weeks, which can sound glamorous, but it's quite difficult. Especially it's important for people to be integrated into society and a small community. You get a lot of value and stuff from that. So it's it's very monk-like. I feel like the life I'm living, obviously being in Italy and still being a scholar of the language, you can communicate with people, but connecting takes a better understanding of the language. So it's a very raw and bare-boned process, but it's been interesting. I'm learning a lot, and I'm not sure of other environments in which I feel like I could learn as much as I'm learning now. So I'm thankful to the sport because of it, but it's not easy. And don't be hard on yourself if it is feeling like it's difficult, because I think many people are feeling that way. Try and then focus on other things that you enjoy, and the sport will fall back into shape.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, please. And Brian, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on Instagram. And
Perfect. Thank you very much.
If I get the time, I'll try to answer them as thoroughly as possible. So yeah, don't be shy, man.
Honestly, I really appreciate you've given us, God, an hour and a half of your time. That's more than I could ever really ask for.
Very generous.
I went out on a limb just asking, just thinking I might chance it. He might say no, he might say yes, but you said yes, and you've done the best as well. So I really couldn't be more thankful for it.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. No, I'm glad you appreciate it. Yeah, it's been my pleasure, and I wish you all the best. Stay in touch, and I'll definitely be following you.
I will be keeping in touch, definitely, because
magic.
Yeah, brilliant contact to have.
Great, man. All the best, and we'll chat soon.
Perfect. Cheers, Zane.
Thanks for reaching out. Cheers, guys.
Nice to meet you, Zane.
Cheers.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a